Okay, at this point in time, hopefully you have watched the video on how to compare fractions. Now we are going to start comparing a variety of things. So we're going to have a fraction and a percent and a decimal, and then eventually we're going to have to compare fractions, decimals, and percents. So to begin with, I'm going to just tell you one of the best ways is to always just change them to a decimal. And so for right now, that is what I want you guys to do too. Always change them to a decimal. As we get going and we get much better at this, if you feel as though you have a better way, eventually that would be fine. But for right now, I really want you to stick with this method of just changing them to a decimal. Okay? So, number 5. Okay, shh. So we have a fraction and a percent, and we're going to change both of them to a decimal. So I'm going to have 7/8. Okay, so we have 7 divided by 8 equals 0.875. Then we have a percent of 75%. We're going to change that to a decimal. So 1, 2 points.
1, 2.
Great. Go color. I'll be with you in just a minute, okay? Go find a Twizzler. Really quick. Fast. Sorry, I have a little mini-me with me today, recording. So she decided she wanted to play hide-and-go-seek there a minute, but I'm not hiding. So, anyway, let's line these decimals up. Okay. Now, if you remember when we first started comparing decimals, one of the things that often we just automatically assumed that the longer the decimal, the larger it was. But that was not always the case. So we always have to start the larger place value. And in this case, the 8 is larger. So the 7/8 is larger than 75%. Okay? All right. Now, this one's already in a decimal, so we're halfway there. We don't have to change that one to a decimal. Now let's change this one to a decimal. We have 1, 2. So we're going to have 0.96, and we're going to compare that with 1.12.
2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9.
When we compare those, we actually have a whole number in this case. We have a whole number in this case. So we need to start at our largest place value, which is the ones in this case. So, we have 0 and 1. We're going to compare 0 and 1. So when we compare 0 and 1, we find out that the 1 is larger. So in this case, the 112% is greater. Okay? Now, you can see number 7 has a fraction, a percent, and a decimal. So we're going to change all of these to a decimal. Okay? So the first thing, let's change this 1/3 to a decimal. So we have 1 divided by 3. 0.33. 24%, we're going to change that to a decimal. 1, 2. So 0.24. And lastly, 0.27 is already done for us. Okay. Start at our largest place value. Okay. And when we compare here, we see we have a 3, a 2, and a 2. So we know automatically that our largest...
Mama, do this.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Why?
Okay, so we see that 3 is our largest. So I'm going to cross this off and make 1/3 our largest. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the 2 and the 7, or the 2 and the 2. They tie, so we're going to go on to the next place value. So which one's smaller, the 4 or the 7? Well, the 4 is. So we're going to have 24%, then 0.27, then 1/3.
Mama, fight. Oh.
All right, number 8. We're going to change them all to decimals. The 0.5 is done. 2/3, we're going to take 2 divided by 3. We get 0.66. We already have the 0.5. We're going to change this to a decimal. 1, 2. So 0.23. Now, we're going to compare our largest place value. In this case, we have a 6, a 5, and a 2. So right away, we can see which one's our smallest. So 23% is our smallest, then 0.5, and then 2/3. Remember before when we listed these, we always had to list the original? You always have to list the original. So the 0.66 is really 2/3. You have to list it as a 2/3. Okay, let's try number 9. Change them all to decimals. So we're going to change this to 0.64. The next one is 6/4. So we're going to take 6 divided by 4, and automatically I can think to myself, 6/4, that's an improper fraction. So 6 divided by 4 equals 1.5. And then 8/11. 8 divided by 11. Ooh, and it's a repeating one. 0.27 repeated. Okay, so I see that my largest is going to be this one right here because I have a whole number. Okay, this would be a 0, this would be a 0. So my largest is 6/4. Now, I'm going to look at my next two. I have a 6 and a 7. What is the smallest? The 6. So I'm going to have 64% as my smallest. And then I'm going to have the 8/11 as my middle. I also find it very handy if I set these up in order. So I don't know if you notice on number 8, but I accidentally put them in different orders. I put that 0.5 in the middle. I find that if I put them in order, so if I list this one first, and then I list this one, and then I list this one, then I know which one it is. Alright, next one. I'm going to change them all to decimal. 1, 2. The next one's done for us. And then 4/5. So 4 divided by 5. 0.8. Now I'm going to compare the 5, the 4, and the 8. Which one is the smallest? Is the 4. So that one was in original form 0.41. The next smallest is the 54, so 54%. And lastly, 4/5. Hopefully you are to the point where these are getting easy for you. Okay, so these next two, what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video right here. And I want you to try these on your own. So I want you to try these on your own. After you've paused them, come back and check your answers with me. Okay? So pause, try 11 and 12, and then check your answers with me. Alright, now that you are back, I am changing these quickly to all decimals. My smallest would be 0.32, then 5/6, then 87%. The next one. 4/5 I know is 0.8 off the top of my head, and then 0.45. Compare the largest place value. 16% is my smallest. 45% is my next smallest. And then 4/5 is my largest. When you are playing your tug of war game today, it would be wise to look at your decimal of each of these. However, you are going to need to change each of them to a fraction, a decimal, and a percent. So you will need to do all of that. Okay?
Go.